me explain something about the slave trade real quick, because the slave trade trumps a lot of arguments. There's a lot of conversations. There's a lot of conversations that go in unnecessary directions because of one party on one side being unwilling to admit, okay, whatever you want to talk about, we should just have that conversation. That's what people need to be saying to the Negro today. Real talk. I want to make sure that white people, let me be clear. Let me make sure that Euro Americans understand where I'm coming from on this. Black people, and actually this is not just for Euro Americans, this is for other black people who feel like there are, let me break down the problem for you. Let me break down the problem for you. Because this is frustrating as hell. It's frustrating as hell. I want to break down the problem for y'all. The Negro, and I refer to her as the Negro for a reason. It's because she lacks an identity and has been suffering from an identity crisis for a very long time now. Centuries. Many of, for many Euro Americans, you may not know. You may be oblivious to the following. Or you may have heard about this, but you don't really understand how virulent the problem is. You may not have yet grasped how acutely affected our entire community actually is by this conversation. But I'm gonna break it down for you. Whether you realize it or not, what's happening in the black community right now is a culmination of many different facets of the long-held, the long-endured identity crisis of the Negro. There are segments of the black community that are growing in size as we speak, who challenge the mainstream narrative on who we are and where we come from. Enter stage left the Black Hebrew Israelites, but also enter stage right the scads of Black Americans who claim to be indigenous to this land by blood and fully so, wholly so, almost entirely indigenous to this land. And many of them, of course, are going further than me, because I personally, for anyone who's ever seen a video on this channel, by now you may have noticed I don't identify as fully indigenous. I identify as largely indigenous. I've done my genealogy. And when you talk to these people who look like me and they claim to be indigenous, they gonna tell you they've done their genealogy. They have traced each blood. They have traced their maternal grandmother's line, their maternal grandfather's line, their paternal grandmother's line, their paternal grandfather's line, and up through multiple generations each. That's what I've done. Going as far back as records will take us, and just finding nothing but evidence of being indigenous to this land. Not just on the basis that, oh, well, my ancestor was here, so they must have been born here, so therefore they must not have come on a ship. No, we're not being stupid. We're not being stupid. So I'm breaking this down for you. Listen, you got a lot of them, a lot of us claiming to be indigenous to this land. And Native Americans, whom I include in the term Euro-Americans. When I say Euro-Americans, the people I'm referring to are white people. Native Americans, who are predominantly white, are upset. They are offended that the Negro would lay claim to Abo identity. Now, my great-grandmother grew up on the reservation in Oklahoma. I'm not trying to prove nothing to nobody just for the sake of trying to get in. I'm not trying to get in where I fit in. I'm just telling my truth, just as it is. Listen, listen. I'm not trying to force nothing. I was the most Afrocentric dude in my group of friends growing up. I was all about Africa as a child. I was. And I still rep that hard. I got so much love for Africa, it ain't funny. I'm about Nigeria. I'm about Ghana. I'm about all of that. However, I would be remiss not to explain and admit that genealogically, significantly less of my genetic composition is coming from people who got off a boat from there than it is coming from people who were already here. I'm just saying. That's just it just is what it is. I don't know what to. I don't know what to tell you. I don't know what to tell you. And like I said before, you got the Black Hebrew Israelites. Think about this. The Black Hebrew Israelites are out here. They claim to be the descendants of ancient Israelites, the people of the book. And they look like me also. They're part of the same community I'm in. I live outside the hood. I can go into the hood by stepping 5 feet to the left right now. And I can walk into the hood right now and show you where they at. I know where they at. I can show you where they at in my city. I can go find them. Like that. And wherever there is a preponderance of my people, you can find more of. Wherever 2 or 3 are gathered, you will find more Black Hebrew Israelites among them. Every time you walk into a new city that got a lot of us, that got enough of us, you will find it. Why is that? Talk to me. Why is that? Because the Jewish people are offended. Jewish people are offended about this. Now listen, there are Black people in our community who disparage the crap out of those of us who belong to either camp, let alone both. For us to be saying the things that we're saying, many Black people are embarrassed to know us. And they refuse. Let me get this out. They refuse. Listen to me. They refuse to give us the time of day when we try to talk to them about their own ancestry. They are offended on your behalf. And they are the majority in our community, I would say. Facts. Now, they are decreasing in number because these camps that I'm talking about are growing. These factions, and they're not, let me not use the word camps or factions. These are These are just ideological classes. That's what these are, ideological ilks, if that makes sense. Those who carry these fringe ideologies, those who ascribe to these fringe ideologies, offend other black people. This is where it gets very frustrating for me, because here's the thing. Native Americans and Jews agree that black people have got to stop being crazy and stop infringing upon the identities of their people by even saying what we're saying. Stop saying it because it's offensive. Stop saying it because it's racist. Stop saying it because it's anti-Semitic. End the conversation. Despite the fact that there are people in their own ethnic groups standing behind them, scholars, experts on the histories of their own people, who say there's merit to what these black people are talking about. On both sides. And we will pull out quotes from them. We will pull out whole dissertations written by them. We will pull out whole podcasts done by those experts, by those people who should know. And we will show you talking to yourself about us and how we're not crazy. But you will stand on, you crazy, stop being racist, stop being anti-Semitic. Now, this is not a rant about we're right and you're wrong. That's not the point. That's not the point. You can continue to believe we're completely asinine, crazy, and wrong if you want to. That's fine. The purpose of this rant is not at all to change your beliefs or your opinions about the identity of the Negro. I just want to change your perspective on the conversation. You have yet to recognize or admit or acknowledge that you owe us the conversation. And that's what frustrates me. What kills me is that you don't believe that you should be obligated to talk to me about why I think I'm you. You get offended by what we have to say. You get offended by what we have to say. But let me ask you a question. Who in hell were the perpetrators of the slave trade? Who did it? We got black folk out here claiming to be Moors, which is a gross oversimplification and misunderstanding of what a Moor is. I mean, sure, I guess. But regardless, yet another African connection, but regardless, whatever. Whatever identity we claim, who were the perpetrators of the Arab slave trade or the transatlantic slave trade? Because if you participated in any way in that, what I mean is, listen, because I'm not blaming Jews as a whole for the transatlantic slave trade as a whole. I'm saying, did you play a part? Did you participate in the slave trade? Because the big thing about the slave trade is displacement. If the slaves were in large numbers owned by Native Americans, Indians, if we know that Indians owned slaves and other Indians were slaves, who's following me? Who's following what I'm putting? Who's picking up what I'm putting down? If we know that a lot of Indians were slaves and a lot of Indians were slave owners, you feel me? And you moved us around. We all cool with admitting that whoever the slaves were, that's my ancestors, right? Not yours. It's predominantly people looking like me, right? That part we all agree on. Okay, so then it was me who got displaced. I was at point A and you moved me to point B. Handed me a slave Bible, meaning a Bible that didn't even have all the books and chapters in it. Made me believe what's in it, but only read the bits and pieces I was authorized to read. Got the slave Bible on display in a museum today, and so we no one's crazy for talking about that. You take me from wherever I was, whether I was in Africa or Alabama. You understand that if you moved me and then separated me from my parents and separated my child from me, then I could not possibly pass down the requisite information to my child, to my offspring. There's no way my bloodline could keep an oral tradition that it undoubtedly had to have, no matter who I was. If I was Igbo, if I was a slave of the kingdom of Congo, if I was Yoruba, if I was Creek Indian, which I was, if I was Cherokee Indian, which I was both. I was Cherokee, I was Creek, I was Igbo, and I was Beta Israel from the Congo. I was all of them. You don't want me to say that because you feel like that's offensive. Your scholars admit that it is a statistical likelihood that I am right on all four counts, and I can bring you your studies to prove it. You are an average citizen and an average resident of your community. You are not the scholar on the subject. Just because you are a Jew, just because you are an Aborigine. You may be a Native American, but you being a Native American does not make you a scholar on Native American histories. Right? Right? So if I bring you receipts, how is it you get the right to dismiss what I'm saying? How's that possible? Because the thing is, you're the one who displaced me in the first place. You're the one who is solely responsible for me forgetting and having to recall who the hell I am. If it turns out I'm actually Mongolian and everyone's wrong, it is your fault that I don't know.